May 6th, 1944. The Philippine Sea, somewhere between Luzon and Formosa. Commander Sam Dealey stood in the conning tower of USS Harder, watching through the periscope as a Japanese destroyer sliced through the water toward him. The destroyer's captain knew exactly where Harder was hiding. This wasn't a patrol, this was a hunt, and Harder was the prey. Sam Dealey was 33 years old, from Dallas, Texas. He'd graduated from the Naval Academy in 1930, right as the Depression hit America hard. While his classmates wondered if there'd even be a Navy to serve in, Dealey quietly studied everything he could about submarines. He wasn't the loudest officer, he wasn't the most decorated, but the men who served under him noticed something unusual. Sam Dealey never panicked, never raised his voice, and he had this strange habit of doing exactly what conventional wisdom said you shouldn't do. Now, on this hot May morning, conventional wisdom said run. Destroyers were submarine killers. They were faster, they had sonar, they had depth charges that could crush a submarine like an aluminum can. The standard doctrine, drilled into every submarine captain at New London, was simple. If a destroyer spots you, go deep, go quiet and pray. You don't fight a destroyer, you survive it. Dealey's executive officer, Lieutenant Frank Lynch from Brooklyn, stood next to him. Lynch had been with Dealey for 3 patrols now. He'd learned to read his captain's silences. And right now, watching Dealey's face, Lynch felt his stomach tighten. He'd seen that expression before. It meant Dealey was about to do something that would either get them all killed or make them legends. The destroyer was closing fast. Through the periscope, Dealey could make out details now. The rising sun flag whipping from her mast, the sharp bow cutting white foam, the depth charge racks on her stern, loaded and ready. She was the Ikazuchi, a Fubuki-class destroyer. 1,600 tons of warship designed specifically to kill submarines like Harder. What the Japanese captain didn't know was that Sam Dealey had been studying destroyer tactics for 14 years. He'd read every intelligence report, watched every training film, interviewed every submarine captain who'd survived a depth charge attack, and he'd noticed something. Something that nobody else seemed to think was important. Destroyers hunted submarines the same way every time. It was almost ritualistic. They'd get a sonar contact, speed up to attack speed, around 25 knots. Fire depth charges set for different depths, then circle around and do it again. The pattern was predictable because it worked. Submarines would hear the destroyer coming, dive deep, and hope the depth charges weren't set to their depth. It was a game of vertical hide-and-seek. But Dealey had realized something. At 25 knots, a destroyer couldn't dodge. Its own speed and momentum locked it into a straight line for precious seconds. And if you could time it exactly right, if you could read the destroyer's attack run perfectly, if you could stay shallow instead of diving deep, you could fire torpedoes down the throat, head-on, into a target that couldn't maneuver. It was suicide tactics. His instructors at New London had told him. The risk was insane. You'd be staying shallow right where the depth charges would hit. You'd be exposing yourself at the worst possible moment. One mistake in timing, one miscalculation, and Harder would be crushed. Lynch watched his captain. Dealey hadn't moved the periscope, hadn't given any orders. The crew was silent. 80 men holding their breath in the steel tube beneath the ocean. The destroyer was less than 2,000 yards away now. Lynch could hear the ping of her sonar through the hull, active pinging. She had them locked. Dealey finally spoke. His voice was quiet, conversational, like he was ordering coffee. Make ready tubes 1, 2, and 3. Set depth 6 feet. Bearing 340. 6 feet. Lynch felt the words hit him. 6 feet meant the torpedoes would run just below the surface. They'd leave wakes. The destroyer would see them coming. But they'd also hit high, above the waterline, where a destroyer's armor was thinnest. The torpedo officer, Lieutenant John Krell from Minnesota, repeated the orders. His voice was steady, but his hands shook as he set the depth. Krell had a wife and 2 daughters in Street Paul. He'd joined the Navy in 1936 because it seemed like stable work. Now he was setting torpedoes to depths that made no tactical sense, on orders from a captain who seemed determined to ram a destroyer. 1,000 yards. The Ikazuchi's bow was pointed directly at them. She was accelerating. The pinging was constant now, a metallic hammering that echoed through Harder's hull. Some of the younger crewmen looked pale. One kid from Oklahoma, just 19, had his eyes closed and was moving his lips. Lynch realized he was praying. Dealey still hadn't moved. His right eye was pressed to the periscope. His left hand rested on the firing mechanism. He was breathing slowly, deliberately. Lynch had seen him do this before. Dealey called it getting into the rhythm. Reading the enemy's intentions through the periscope's narrow field of view, 700 yards. The Ikazuchi's depth charge crews were visible now, standing ready at the racks. They were so close Dealey could see individual sailors, young men, probably scared, definitely determined, doing their duty just like Harder's crew was doing theirs. Dealey had grown up in Dallas during the oil boom. His father had been a wildcatter, drilling for oil in fields that everyone said were played out. His father had taught him something that stuck. Sometimes the thing everyone knows to be true isn't true. Sometimes the conventional wisdom is just conventional. And sometimes you have to risk everything on what you've figured out yourself. 500 yards. The destroyer was a wall of steel filling the periscope. This was the moment. This was the decision point. Go deep and run, or stay shallow and attack. Fire 1, fire 2, fire 3. The submarine shuddered as 3 Mark 14 torpedoes leapt from their tubes, 21 feet long, 3,000 pounds each, carrying 600 pounds of high explosive. Running at 46 knots on a collision course with a warship that was charging directly at them. Dealey didn't dive. He kept the periscope up, watching. The torpedoes left white wakes on the surface. The destroyer spotted them immediately. The Ikazuchi's captain did exactly what Dealey knew he would do. He tried to turn. At 25 knots, with full rudder, the destroyer started a wide arc. But physics doesn't negotiate. Momentum carried her forward, right into the torpedo spread. The first torpedo hit the Ikazuchi's bow. The explosion was visible even through the periscope. A column of water and steel fragments shot up. The destroyer's forward momentum carried her into the second torpedo. This one hit amidships, right below the bridge. And then, impossibly, the third torpedo hit her stern. 3 hits from 3 torpedoes. At point-blank range, against a destroyer that was actively hunting them. Lynch stared at his captain. Other men were cheering. Someone slapped the torpedo officer on the back. But Dealey just stood there, watching through the periscope as the Ikazuchi broke apart. She went down in 4 minutes. Her bow lifted out of the water. Her stern settled. And then she slipped beneath the waves. Dealey finally stepped back from the periscope. Take her down to 400 feet. Rig for silent running. His voice was still calm, still conversational. Like he'd just parallel parked a car instead of sinking a warship in a way that every submarine manual said was impossible. That was day 1. The next morning, May 7th, USS Harder was prowling north of Tawi when the lookout spotted another destroyer. This one was the Hyanami. Dealey studied her through the periscope. She was doing a standard patrol pattern, back and forth, protecting the approaches to Tawi Harbor where the Japanese combined fleet was gathering. Frank Lynch had spent half the night thinking about yesterday. He'd watched his captain do something that defied every instinct submariners were taught, and it had worked. The question burning in Lynch's mind was simple. Was it genius, or was it luck? Could Dealey do it again? They were about to find out. Hyanami hadn't spotted them yet. Dealey could have let her pass, could have saved his torpedoes for merchant ships, but something had shifted in Sam Dealey's mind. He'd proven something yesterday. The down-the-throat shot wasn't suicide, it was a weapon. Maybe the most effective anti-destroyer tactic ever conceived. And if Japanese destroyers could be hunted instead of feared, that changed everything about submarine warfare in the Pacific. Dealey maneuvered Harder into position. Same setup as yesterday. Wait for the destroyer to commit to an attack run. Stay shallow. Fire down the throat. The crew was nervous but focused. They'd seen it work once. Maybe lightning could strike twice. Hayanami's sonar found them. The pinging started. The destroyer turned toward them and accelerated. 25 knots. Bow on. Exactly like Ikazuchi had done yesterday. The Japanese destroyer captains all trained the same way, used the same tactics. That predictability was going to kill them. Make ready tubes 1 and 2. Set depth 6 feet. The attack unfolded like a choreographed dance. Dealey waited until Hayanami was committed, fired 2 torpedoes. Watched through the periscope as the destroyer's captain spotted the wakes and tried to turn. Too late, too fast. Both torpedoes hit. Hayanami exploded and sank in less than 5 minutes. 2 destroyers in 2 days. That night, in the cramped wardroom of USS Harder, the officers sat in stunned silence. John Krell finally spoke. "Skipper, that's 2. 2 destroyers. Nobody's ever done that." Dealey was writing his patrol report. He looked up. "They keep attacking the same way. As long as they do, we can keep sinking them." Lynch leaned forward. "But they'll learn. They'll change tactics." Dealey nodded. "Probably. So we do it as many times as we can before they figure it out." May 8th. Another destroyer. The Minatsuki. Same story. Down the throat shot. 2 torpedoes. Both hit. The destroyer sank in 6 minutes. Dealey's log entry was matter of fact. Attacked and sank Minatsuki-class destroyer with 2 torpedoes fired from bow tubes at range of 900 yards. 3 destroyers in 3 days. The crew of USS Harder was starting to feel invincible. The scared kid from Oklahoma wasn't praying anymore. He was grinning. They'd done something unprecedented, something that would be talked about for years. But they still had 2 days of patrol left. May 9th. Dealey took Harder close to Tawi, too close. He wanted to see what the Japanese fleet was doing. What he saw through the periscope made his blood run cold. Battleships, carriers, heavy cruisers. The entire combined fleet was there, preparing for something big. This intelligence needed to get back to Pearl Harbor immediately, but between Harder and open ocean were destroyer patrols. Thick networks of warships specifically hunting for submarines like his. Getting the intelligence out meant running a gauntlet. They were spotted almost immediately. 2 destroyers this time, working as a team. Namikaze and another ship Dealey couldn't identify. This was different. 2 destroyers could coordinate. One could force Harder to maneuver while the other attacked from a different angle. Dealey studied the situation. The destroyers were separating. Classic pincer movement. In about 3 minutes, Harder would be caught between them. Going deep wouldn't help. They'd bracket the depth with charges. The only option was to attack. But which one? Dealey made his choice. The closer one. Namikaze. Make ready bow tubes. All 6 torpedoes. Set depth 6 feet. We're firing a full spread. Lynch understood. 6 torpedoes at 1 target. Everything they had. Because after this shot they'd have to reload under attack. It was all or nothing. Namikaze was charging. Her captain was aggressive, confident. He'd probably heard about the destroyer sinkings, probably thought his colleagues had made mistakes. He wouldn't make those mistakes, but he made the same one. He came in fast and straight. Committed to the attack run, locked into his approach by his own speed, Dealey fired all 6 bow tubes in a spread. 6 torpedoes racing toward Namikaze. The destroyer's captain spotted them. Started to turn. 3 torpedoes missed, but 3 hit. The Namikaze disintegrated. The explosion was so violent that pieces of the destroyer rained down on Harder's periscope. 4 destroyers in 4 days. The second destroyer broke off, ran. Dealey took Harder deep and slipped away. That night, he composed a message for Pearl Harbor. Detailed intelligence about the combined fleet at Tawi, and a brief note. Expended 23 torpedoes. Sank 4 destroyers. Returning to base, at Pearl Harbor, when the message was decoded, nobody believed it. 4 destroyers? Impossible. Destroyers sank submarines, not the other way around. There had to be an error in the message, some kind of code mistake, but Sam Dealey wasn't done. May 10th. Harder was heading for home, low on fuel, out of torpedoes in the bow tubes. Only stern tubes loaded. They should have been running silent and deep, getting distance from Tawi as fast as possible. Then the lookout spotted another destroyer. Frank Lynch looked at his captain. "Skipper, we're out of bow torpedoes. We only have stern tubes loaded. We can't do a down-the-throat shot from the stern." Dealey studied the destroyer through the periscope. It was the Tanaka's. She was zigzagging, searching, probably hunting for the submarine that had been sinking destroyers all week. "You're right," Dealey said. "We can't attack her from the bow, so we'll attack from the stern." Lynch felt his stomach drop. Attack from the stern meant showing their tail to the destroyer, running away from it while firing backwards. It was the opposite of everything they'd done. Instead of the aggressive down-the-throat shot, they'd be shooting while retreating. It seemed cowardly, desperate, but Dealey had thought it through. The Tanakaze would see Harder running away, would assume the submarine was scared, would chase aggressively, and aggressive ships make mistakes. Dealey turned Harder around and started running. Not full speed, just fast enough to look like they were fleeing. The Tanakaze spotted them and charged. Exactly as Dealey predicted. At 1,200 yards, with the destroyer closing fast, Dealey fired his stern tubes. 4 torpedoes. The Tanakaze's captain saw the wakes, realized too late that the fleeing submarine had been baiting him, tried to turn. 3 torpedoes hit. The Tanakaze rolled over and sank in 7 minutes, 5 destroyers in 5 days. When USS Harder pulled into Fremantle, Australia on May 23, 1944, there was a crowd waiting. Word had spread. 5 destroyers, in 5 days. It was impossible. It was unprecedented. It was the most successful submarine patrol in naval history. Sam Dealey stepped off his boat looking tired. He'd been at sea for 38 days. He'd taken his submarine into waters that other captains avoided. He'd attacked warships that were supposed to hunt him. And he'd fundamentally changed submarine warfare in the Pacific. Admiral Ralph Christie, commander of submarines Southwest Pacific, was there personally. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at Dealey. Then he pulled him aside. "Sam," Christie said, "I need you to tell me the truth. How did you do it?" Dealey was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that Christie would remember for the rest of his life. "Admiral, I just stopped being scared of them. Once you stop being scared, you can see what they're actually doing. And once you see what they're actually doing, you can kill them." The intelligence Dealey brought back about the combined fleet at Tawi was crucial. It helped Admiral Spruance position his forces for what would become the Battle of the Philippine Sea in June. The Japanese fleet that Dealey had spotted was decimated in that battle. American submarines and aircraft sank 3 carriers and damaged dozens of other ships. But the real impact of Harder's patrol was psychological. Every submarine captain in the Pacific heard the story. 5 destroyers, down-the-throat shots, aggressive attacks instead of defensive running. Sam Dealey had shown them something they desperately needed to see. Japanese destroyers could be beaten. After Dealey's patrol, American submarines started hunting destroyers. The predator-prey relationship reversed. By the end of 1944, American submarines had sunk over 40 Japanese destroyers. The hunting grounds shifted. Japanese destroyer captains, who had once patrolled aggressively, became cautious, defensive. Frank Lynch, Dealey's executive officer, got his own command in August 1944. He used Dealey's tactics, sank 2 destroyers on his first patrol as captain. Years later, in an interview in 1983, Lynch said something revealing. "Before Sam showed us it could be done, we all thought destroyers were invincible. After his patrol, we all realized they were just ships, and ships can be sunk." Sam Dealey took Harder out on her 6th war patrol in August 1944. He was hunting in the South China Sea when, on August 24th, Harder was depth-charged by a Japanese destroyer escort and sank with all hands. Sam Dealey was 33 years old. He'd been married to his wife Edwina for 6 years. They had no children. Dealey was awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously. The citation specifically mentioned the 5 destroyers in 5 days, but it also mentioned something else: his willingness to take calculated risks that other commanders thought were impossible. Edwina Dealey accepted her husband's medal in a ceremony at the White House in 1945. She was asked what she thought Sam would have said about the attention. She thought for a moment. Then she said, he'd probably say he was just doing his job, and he'd want to talk about his crew, not himself, the crew of USS Harder. 80 men who went to sea on that May patrol. 80 men who watched their captain do impossible things, who learned that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to act despite fear. 79 of those men survived to see the end of the war. They scattered across America, went home to their families, got jobs, raised children, and carried with them the memory of 5 days when they learned that nothing is truly impossible if you're willing to rethink everything you thought you knew. John Krell, the torpedo officer, became a high school teacher in Street Paul. He never talked much about the war, but his students noticed that whenever they said something couldn't be done, Mr. Krell would get a distant look in his eyes. And he'd say, "Let me tell you about a man I once knew who proved that impossible is just a word." The kid from Oklahoma, whose name was Billy Harper, went home to Tulsa. He worked in the oil fields, raised 4 kids, and every May 6th, for the rest of his life, he'd take out a worn photograph of USS Harder's crew, run his finger over the faces, and remember the week when he learned what real courage looked like. In 1944, the United States Navy had been fighting a defensive submarine war in the Pacific. American submarines were being hunted. They were scared of Japanese destroyers. They were playing it safe. Sam Dealey changed that, not with a speech, not with a manual, but by doing something everyone said couldn't be done, 5 times, in 5 days. The lesson of USS Harder isn't just about submarine tactics. It's about what happens when someone questions conventional wisdom, when someone looks at the thing everyone fears and asks, what if we're wrong about this? What if the thing we think is impossible is actually just hard? Today, as you see on the screen now, there are still submarines in the US Navy, still sailors learning tactics, still young men and women being taught about submarine warfare. And in every submarine school, every naval academy, every warfare training program, they tell the story of USS Harder. 5 destroyers in 5 days, the submarine that wouldn't sink, the captain who refused to be afraid. Sam Dealey's legacy isn't just in the ships he sank or the medal he earned. It's in the mindset he passed on, the idea that the most dangerous enemies are the ones you decide can't be beaten. Once you question that assumption, once you really study your opponent, once you're willing to risk everything on a new approach, the impossible becomes merely difficult, and the difficult becomes achievable. In the end, that's what those 5 days in May 1944 really taught the US Navy. Not a tactic, not a technique, but a philosophy. The hunter can become the hunted, the prey can become the predator, and the thing everyone knows to be true might just be the thing that's holding you back from changing everything.